So I'm here with Harry Wright and Robin Stewart, that's it, aka Giant Swan. I mean, if we were already talking about Giant Swan, how did the project come to be? Because I've read there's been quite a few funny coincidences for the project to really start off.
We play in a band called The Naturals in Bristol. That we started when we were children, basically. We were like 11. So that's how we met. And then, I guess, around 2009, 2010, we started breaking away from the band just to write music on our own, more as a means to sort of explore our pedal boards. So we're really into pedals and guitar noises and that kind of stuff. And then it became like an improv, sort of long-form drone art music kind of project. And then, yeah, we just have slowly developed sound with a few sort of unavoidable changes along the way. But now it's ended up with this sort of club-based sound, and it's been based off our long friendship and interest in music as friends, really.
I mean, it's a funny thing. I've read that one of you guys has broken his arm, and that led to not using two guitars, but instead of that, going to a lot of rhythm machines and stuff.
Yeah. So, basically, I broke my arm. I broke my arm high-fiving my friend.
No way.
Yeah, and it broke in half here, so it's quite a bad break. And we had this show to play. It was with Patton, and it was kind of our first kind of club show, really. We'd done club shows, but kind of on our terms, and then more gigs. But this is the first one we were like, oh, it was already a bit of a club show, and we wanted the show to go on. So I brought this pedal that allowed me to store some sort of rhythms and loops on it, and basically meant that I could do the whole set with like one hand. And then from that, we just kind of got attached to it, and that show sort of set the precedent for kind of future shows, really, in terms of like the kind of vibe we were trying to create, and it being a bit more dance focused.
Exactly, because then the project turned more, as you said, dance focused.
Yeah, it was a bit easy. It wasn't like I broke the arm and we have to do dance music. It was more like the tools we were using because of my broken arm meant that doing dance music was a bit easier, felt a bit more natural.
Yeah.
It was also a thing that we'd never really talked about playing dance music before. And now that our hand had been forced, or our arm had been forced, it was something we'd never thought of. So then it was like, oh, it sounds great when you can push a kick drum through a sound system like that. It's we were into techno and clubbing and stuff, but it was a fun pastime. It wasn't something we ever thought about making. And then,
it was very it was kind of outside of the sort of normal circles we were in. So to go to like a techno rave or something was a bit more of an alien experience for us, which is like more fun.
We just took it really personally. It was like our time to get away.
Yeah.
And go and dance.
Yeah, because funny enough, you guys are from Bristol, but there again, I think your sound is way more similar to the Birmingham sound of techno.
Oh, okay.
Like Surgeon and Female and whatnot.
Yeah.
Instead of the Bristol drum and bass stuff.
Yeah, we were never really that into drum and bass, really. Like we were into dub and sound system.
Yeah.
And the physical bass pressure and and like a lot of our friends have become very seminal dubstep producers and stuff. So we were all kind of shown this kind of thing from them. But there was a point. I can't remember when it was. We buy weed off this guy, and he was from Birmingham.
Yeah.
And then one day he showed me a Regis tune. Something.
Was that how you first heard it?
Yeah,
John?
It's from John. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And and this guy wasn't. He's from Birmingham, and it was just part of his musical heritage. And he was into other stuff, but he showed me that tune, Sand, I think it was. And I then showed it to Harry, and we were like, "That's pretty good. That's pretty good." And we still refer to that song as like, that's pretty much as good as it could get, And it's inspired us in a lot of ways, just to like. But we never like looked into the Birmingham sound and was like, we got to sound like Surgeon or anything.
Yeah.
It's.
But it does somehow go down to that.
Maybe
it's funny enough because it has that. I think your sound has that industrial sound of Birmingham techno, as well as it does the band sound of grit and grainy stuff.
Yeah,
It's
I can understand.
yeah.
I think it's more just like because we use amplifiers. It's like the like the language that we speak is sort of rock band. So like when we came to do Giant Swan with the more sort of rhythmic, more sort of direct sound, I suppose. It's just like we had our own sound system already set up. And, we know how to use amps and we know how to get our sounds the way we want them through them. So yeah, and I think that if there's a link between sort of Birmingham techno or whatever and us, it's probably more just like a necessary means. Like those guys didn't have a lot, and they were part of a scene that didn't really accept them. And whereas we were never like shunned from anything, we never really fitted in with what we were doing.
Well, so we weren't trying to. That was the point.
Yeah.
We didn't see some techno artists and thought we want to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe the similarity comes from similar ethos in terms of trying to get some emotional value and some contextual narrative into what we're trying to do, not just be like make stuff sound like gnarly.
Yeah.
Because I do like the Birmingham stuff, but a lot of it I think is a bit like aesthetic heavy. It's based on this whole industrial thing, and for me that doesn't really resonate with us. But the message does definitely.
Yeah, because Bristol's not an industrial city. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think we're influenced by the live band scene and the relationship that dub has with post-punk, for example, because it's all very what is the word I'm thinking of? It's all very self-sufficient. So again, coming back to sound system culture, that kind of control freak element of us knowing exactly where the sound's coming from. So us using amps and.
But there again, that is really big nowadays in techno as well, like the post-punk kind of
Yes.
vibe, like DIY stuff.
Yeah.
It's going big these days.
I think, to be honest, though, a lot of it's caught up in it's fashion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like post-punk was fashion, and techno is fashion, and it's and I think in I don't know, just the opportunities that we get to go and play all over Europe, and it's amazing how diverse the club scene is. It's not all Berlin centric. It's not all Birmingham sound centric. It's super diverse, and there is an element of conservatism where people do want, the expected thing to happen, but so often it just can't because everywhere is relative to everywhere else, and everywhere's got its own little thing, and for us techno is about that total liberation of the self. You go into the dance and you just let go for a few hours, and then you continue on with your life, and you can whatever you want. But for those few hours, you're just kind of concentrated down.
And I mean, lately you guys have been on both sides of the spectrum as far as clubbing scene and typical concert gig stuff. How do you find the balance in between those, or which one do you maybe prefer, if any?
I think that the fact that you said there's a balance, I think, is just right for us. We like having both. And I don't think we'd want to commit to just one of those worlds. I guess, it's a personal thing. It just depends on the music, really, and the context. But I think we come from this live music background. So I think part of us is always a bit more, our heart's always a bit more drawn to stuff that is actually real. Do you know what I mean? Real instruments, real people, songs, lyrics, emotion. And so I think for me that's always gonna top club stuff.
Yeah, sure. So Giant Swan also, how did you guys come to that name?
It's a band called the Blood Brothers.
Yeah.
This one of their tunes was called Giant Swan.
It's the last track on their last album, and we're huge fans. And actually, the song, the kind of content of the song, actually pretty represents a bit of what we're about. But not we didn't really mean for that to happen. It was Rob was just quite drawn to the name.
Oh, that's it.
That's just a great
Our
name.
interpretations can sometimes be super funny, and especially just funny and ridiculous. But isn't it a swan kind of a funny bird because it looks elegant and nice and relaxed, and then
It's actually evil.
it's super evil, it's super aggressive.
You can break your arms.
Especially it's giant.
Oh wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh my god. Whoa.
But also like their music.
Well, I mean, another thing that we're quite proud of with the name, I guess, is that it's not this it doesn't. You just think of a big swan.
Yeah.
We're on a lineup with all these. Like a club lineup we find it quite funny to sort of perforate that seriousness, to have a name like Giant Swan, and then if people don't know what we sound like, then they might come along out of curiosity and then they'll get it. But then it's nice that people have now sort of, like we've built up a little following in Europe and people know what they're going to get with Giant Swan. So the name is just, it just serves to divorce everyone from the idea of what the club space should be like and what the artist you're going to watch is going to be like, you know. It's kind of all towards that, separating the idiom of techno and clubbing from like the actual experience of like a physical sound system and maybe the consumption of drugs and alcohol, maybe, but just that environment and how like you don't just need to be like po-faced and playing dark techno because, you know, anyone can make anybody move like that and might as well just be a little bit more unique, I suppose.
And so far, I've read you've got, mixed feelings about that, about your super lively performance.
How do you mean mixed feelings?
I've read somebody, like some people did not necessarily see your performance in Tresor, video.
Oh, there was just a really heavy bass frequency in that room at that show, and people in Berlin don't seem to like bass that much, like that much.
Yeah.
I think it was just the bass wasn't mixed very well.
Yeah.
So I think we there was a sound issue.
Yeah.
That maybe in other places we would have gotten away with it, but when you go to like the mecca of like perfectly produced techno music, it's hard to get away with slight flares. So I think that was maybe highlighted. And we played another show in Munich, where someone didn't like it so much that he just turned the sound off.
He just reached over,
just a stranger,
just dipped it, but then someone just turned it back off again, and he probably went home. That's
a metaphor for a whole sound, basically. Just someone turning it off and then someone turning it back on.
So, what kind of toys, what kind of instruments or your tools you use these days for music making? Do you see that is, or playing live even?
We're playing live. We use a drum machine each. I use a synthesizer.
Some modular stuff.
And then I have a little modular thing.
Yeah.
And then just guitar pedals, just the same guitar pedals that we use back when we played in a band, like every week, you know. And it's like, so some of these pedals have been with us for like over 10 years, which is nice. And it's pretty complicated to look at, but it's like we know it inside out, and it's it's like the only way we know how to play.
And you do improvise most of the times.
All the time.
All the time, yeah. We've been playing together for so long that we can kind of read each other a bit, and we know the kind of sounds we can come up a bit sometimes. So we know the kind of sounds that we can produce, and we know a lot about how each other work, so we can kind of join the dots and just rely on our instincts and our relationship on stage and other things to create a...
You rely on the public as well.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that is, if anything, it could be like, sometimes it could be 50% the public, 50% each other that we rely on, because... we could, there's times before when, we'd still improvise, but we'd have maybe a clear idea about what we wanted to get out of the show, and then when we go to the room or the club, it might just be a totally different thing, or we might whisper to each other 5 minutes before, actually, let's scrap that whole idea, because there's no one here, or that's not going to sound good, or, So it's good, we don't want to go into everything with a bit more of an open mind. It helps us to relax about it as well. It means we don't get too nervous, and it puts us on the same level as the audience. If we're all hearing the same thing, essentially, new for the first time. It keeps it fun and instinctive for us.
It keeps that level of elitism and expectation out of our set. Because if there's people that know our music, bless them, or there's people that know techno or know clubbing and stuff, if they're getting something that's totally unadulterated and unfiltered, and we don't even know what's going to happen, then it takes away the no one can be like, oh, I knew you were going to do that, or oh, I love this tune, because no one knows. So it's you're gonna. Going back to what we that's what I love about the urgency of the Birmingham sound, was that you didn't really know what was going to happen next. The tune might not change, but the energy levels would be completely unexpected every single time, and it's that's something that we enjoy about watching DJs. Anyways, when they throw in a curveball and play a Danny Brown tune in the middle of a techno set. Because you can make it work, and it's that total whoa, I did not see that coming. It's really infectious for us, and that's what we want to try and give to people with the show.
But that doesn't necessarily apply to production, does it? Production is a really different
Totally.
Yeah.
approach, isn't it?
We're deliberately trying to approach
I mean,
them separately.
But do you still produce mostly as jamming and then take some time with your arrangements, or
If anything,
how
it's
does that differ with
So-
live performance?
so before we were trying to kind of recreate this live energy on record, and actually we
Yeah.
felt that to be quite limiting, and we wanted to deliberately try and create two separate entities. So what we're creating on record is something that can be translated live, but is not going to hold us or kind of restrict us to that.
Yeah.
So everything we're making, we don't really make songs out of jamming in terms of production. We make songs, on different, like we both kind of compose it separately and then bring ideas to each other. But it's, us using our live show as a reference point. So yeah, we can produce anything, but we know that we want it to be represented in some way live. So we're not going to use sounds that don't exist or we can't recreate live. But it's about just being clear that actually we don't want to try and recreate this thing. It's not like trying to. This feels a bit ingenuine because each show is different. So to create a piece of music, we want to actually put some effort into and kind of nurture actually in a different way than jamming and trying to record this kind of this atmosphere. Do you know what I mean?
And I guess that also applies to each record. Each record, you like to be a bit different and
Sure.
special.
Sure. Well, I mean, like the records that we've put out recently, the tunes are quite old.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just
Mannequin and Mighties, or
yeah. For example, those two, like.
I mean, they're not that old.
I mean,
really.
they're kind of old.
I mean, relative to like all dance music, in terms of people putting, it's a different conversation really. And that's another thing because in dance music, you put stuff out that is older than if you're in like a rock band.
Yeah.
Like rock bands, when you're putting out,
put as an old, for instance.
I mean, I guess 10 months is old, right? Is that what you're referring to?
What do you mean?
Like the Whitey's records.
Yeah. As in, like, it's not like we wrote those tunes and then like got them out and now we're touring those tunes. Like we worked on them, and then like the record was being made, and then we were just off playing and continuing to write, and like when it's
a different thing though, because with live music, the music that you're kind of, with like bands for example, the music they're kind of touring, they probably wrote that like 6 months ago. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in dance music, that rarely happens.
No.
So that's an infrastructure we're getting used to working in. So our idea of like tunes being old, to someone else that could be like the newest song they've ever done, but they know that they're in the infrastructure of having to wait 10 months for records to be pressed, for labels to decide what colour, whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's a different thing. And I think it says a lot because I think with live music, with like bands, you really want to capture the emotional state of what they're in, and that fades over time. Whereas there's not really that kind of emotional connection with any dance music that people feel like they have to capture it because it.
Because I think that's the idea, like the lose the spirit of time.
Yeah,
definitely,
exactly. Make a timeless thing that.
Lose a bit.
And I think like with regards to our productions, like they're every single one is different. Like the idea might be good and we'll work on it, or it might just fade away and we'll work on something else. It's kind of in the same vein as the shows in that we're not too precious about stuff, and we talk to each other a lot about not being too precious about the sonic elements, because you can always just make a new one. You know what I mean? And like we're quite resourceful, and like because we use the voice as well, like we always make room for the voice, or like Harry would design a sound that emulates me, or I'll design a sound that emulates him, and we'll bring it together and mix it, and because we're not DJs, like we don't have to worry about like get it out and play it. You know what I mean? So we can just send it to our DJ friends and they'll play it. And like the two worlds are very separate, like recorded and live. And that's how we like it.
Definitely. I mean, just trying to figure out which way to go must be very, difficult for you guys.
Yeah,
especially being used to the whole band culture for quite a long time.
Sure. But I think us sort of separating the kind of recorded mindset and the live thing just means that I think our sound allows it to develop a bit easier and a bit more natural, because I think without that we'd be trying to kind of putting ourselves in a box. We can only move so far because the live thing has to sound like the record has to sound like the live thing, and they can only move in increments if we're trying to represent each thing.
It's so much different from the whole Bristol perspective in electronic music, that is, because like drum and bass is all about being super polished, being like all
And then on the other side, you've got Massive Attack and Portishead records that sound like they were recorded on a piece of toast.
And they probably were recorded like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
How often they are.
Yeah.
That's very true.
But it's, yeah, I mean, like that's something we've never really thought about. Even it's just the aesthetic of the music, and you know, and you can hear it in techno across Europe as well. Like everyone, you know, there was a point where everyone trying to sound a bit like this, or everyone trying to sound a bit like that, and it, you know, that'll come and go, and like. It's just, I think, just as long as you're like aware of the context that you're going to be heard in, you can avoid that, or you can have a go yourself and like try and write the next whatever, you know.
So what is your perfect place to be heard in? Your perfect situation, your music. Where is your music the most? Live.
What you mean to play? Play live or?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Or any kind of situation. I mean,
Just
would you describe it as something somebody can listen to at home on a piece of headphones or
Sure, if I want to. I mean, like, I think personally, I'd probably say come to the show.
Yeah.
You know, like a nice, loud club that's not too big. You know, like we like intimacy and we like volume. And yeah, I don't know.
I mean, do you think about how your music functions when it comes out? Or is it just like
It's
purely
not
your
really.
It's a different
emotional
thing.
state going into some sonic vibes?
Yeah, it's a different thing because when you're talking about like the context of music being heard in terms of our tracks, you know, like a DJ playing our tracks, that's a very different thing. You know what I mean? When we've walked into raves and someone might have been playing one of our songs, and that creates a different atmosphere to maybe what we want or what we perceived as us playing live in that same room. So you know what I mean? It's like a whole other conversation to have. And I think we're lucky that we get to pull on these different kind of routes to go down. But it's kind of hard. It's hard pinpointing.
Yeah, I don't know if there is like a perfect space or anything. It's just like
because we adapt to each different space,
Yeah.
and that's hopefully what our strength is in terms of like being able to be instinctive in front of.
yeah,
Yeah.
It's like we can like play in a big club, with a big sound system one night, and then go and play in like a squat rave with just amps and try and make the best of it.
And the concept being basically the same.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, but then it's also about like divorcing yourself from the concept. Because if you're going to watch a rave or like you're going to watch us, and it's not in this big club, then like you might not know how to deal with what you get. Do you know what I mean? But it's because we come from the improv world, we come from the noise world. You know, when we started Giant Swan, it was like we were stepping out of the band thing into this totally new context, and it just allowed us to be totally free. You know, and do things that we didn't even know the other one was into. So like playing like noise music. We'd never been like, should I do some noise today? And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, I'd look up and Harry's like fucking cranking it out. I'd be like, just do that next week. And you'll be fine. And then it's just different again. And that's the way that we feel comfortable. And I guess it's not really, like in the most brutal way, it's not really for anyone else. Like if, you know, it's I quite like the voyeurism involved. If people come and look at us and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? You know, he's got his top off, like they're thrashing around loads. I quite like the idea that it would sort of abruptly stop someone and they'd have to sort of quickly reconsider whether or not they want to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it's only when people think about music is when, you know, you can really appreciate it. If it's only background noise, you know, what's the point of it, I guess.
Quite, yeah. Right. And I think certainly within the
it has to be something that really makes you, oh, wait, what's that? You know?
Yeah. Well, certainly within the circles we play in, like there's a lot of identity flying around. You know, like this person is like representing this, and then the next person is representing the same thing, but they're wearing a slightly different jacket, kind of thing. It's like it's quite hard to stand out in that world because people do have an idea about what they want to hear coming out of the sound system. They do have an idea about the kind of beats they want to hear you play. They have the idea they want to hear you play beats. You know what I mean? So like tonight, you know, we're gonna play with Aisha Devi. Like she's one of the most singular artists out right now, and she's, you know, it's just her voice is like the main power, and then she'll just hit you with all this music. You know what I mean? Suddenly, it's just like really like live music that's very affecting, and it's great to be playing with someone like that because she stands totally alone in her field, and hopefully we can like just bring a similar side but a totally different flavor to that. Yeah. For example.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty on point everything. So maybe for the very last question, what's up next? You know?
We're writing an LP.
You're writing an LP
that will come out soon.
All right.
It's been a long, yeah. I think we kind of needed some time to just write. Really, we're doing a lot of shows, but the first time we've decided to actually block
Stop
out
playing shows.
Yeah, just to write, because this whole like year or two we've been writing alongside doing shows, and yeah. So I think we've had a lot of releases come out last year, so this is our chance to nurture a new record and have a bit of time around it, and then just shows, I guess.
Yeah. We're gonna tour a lot next year again. And
And if the album comes out, then it's a must.
it is a must.
We're gonna do one show.
yeah, just more of the same, really. Like, hopefully, nice people will keep inviting us to play, and we'll keep making friends.
Sure you will.
Yeah.
Sure you
I
will.
hope so.
Guys, yeah, thank you for your time.
Oh, no, thank you.
Have a successful show tonight. I'm sure
Cheers.
it's going to be great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, see you tonight.
Yeah,
Cheers.
likewise.